Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Allison Satter, and I'd like to welcome you to the SWIFT webinar, Driven by Data, Using Data to Improve Student Outcomes. We're so glad that you could join us today. Before we get started, I want to go over a few of the logistics. For this webinar, we are only providing online access, but if you have any feedback or questions throughout, please list them in the chat box, and we'll either attempt to address them throughout or else we'll save them for the end when we go through a question and answer portion of the webinar. Which we will be saving the last 10 to 15 minutes of the webinar today specifically for addressing any questions you have. So you can also save them for that. And just so you know, this webinar is being recorded and it will be available on swiftschools.org after the presentation. We're very excited today to have Dr. Chandra Williams with us. Dr. Williams is a National Educational Expert Consultant and Trainer. She serves as the SEA Facilitator for SWIFT. She's responsible for providing leadership to districts and schools in Mississippi. Her previous work in various senior leadership roles at the state education department includes she was state director of curriculum and instruction, an urban school district chief academic officer, urban school turnaround principal, a reading specialist, a clinical social worker, and a special education teacher. So she has a lot of experience. She's also done extensive research within the framework of multi-tiered systems of support in response to intervention. So we are very honored to have Chandra with us today.
Thank you, Dr. Satter, and I'm so glad to be with you all today. Can you all hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, great. Okay, so we're going to get started. The first thing I want to do is go over some of our learning objectives for today. Today, we're going to really go deep into some of the data sources that you have available to you at the district, the school, and the state level, and how we are going to use data in a meaningful way to change the outcomes for our students. How to use data to drive change at every level within the educational system, and why is it that data tells the story? Data tells the story as to what we're doing, that we need to keep doing, what we're doing that we may need to revisit, and some of the things that we're doing that we need to stop doing because it's not giving us the results that we are looking to achieve in terms of student results, as well as some of the things that we may not be doing that we need to start doing. So now when we think about Swift core features and domains, one of the things that we know the core central component of Swift is our focus is on all students achieving um, making adequate achievement. At grade level. What does that encompass? It encompasses strong education educator support systems. On Swift's, Swift.org, we have strong educator support and we have some resources available that explains why teachers need to be provided with professional development coaching and how it impacts student achievement. Why is it that strong engaged site leadership, where does that fit into the component in terms of supporting student achievement? And how do we use data to inform all of our decisions as we look at all of these circles around student achievement and where administrative leadership needs to be laser focused to ensure that at each leadership team meeting, we're using data to make decisions. So having data is only the beginning. What we choose to do with the knowledge and develop through data analysis is critical. So of course, as you know, all of us have lots of data coming at us in our districts, schools, and at the state level. And in some regards, at some time, some of us may feel that we're data rich, but information poor. Allison, can you bring in the first poll? So I would like for you all to take a moment and look at this question and provide your answers. Do you currently use more than one type of data during leadership team meetings? Yes or no? So 100% of you use data in your leadership team meetings. Thank you, Allison. And so what does that mean? Does that mean that we have 100% of our students who are at grade level proficiency? Because if we're using data 100% of the time in our leadership team meetings, all of our children should be making adequate progress. A great teacher for every student, a great leader for every school, a great school for every community. That's a sample vision statement. But what this statement encompasses, how do we have a great teacher for every student? That requires that we're laser focused in the data that we use. What are some data elements that we use to create great teachers? One data element is our evaluation system aligned, teacher evaluation system, which is a part of Swift's transformation work? Is our teacher evaluation system aligned to the results that we're getting in terms of student achievement? As a great leader, are we using the data from our teacher evaluation system to assess what our professional development needs and coaching supports are, and whether they are impacting student achievement at the rate at which we are expecting? And every great school for every community is only created when we're using our data to drive instruction. So now we talk about trends. And so as we move into today's data session and we think about the word trend, when we think about the word trend, we use it quite often when we're analyzing data. But what does trend really mean? When we think about identifying the trends in the data that we see, basically what it's saying to us is that we need to think slowly, carefully, and deliberately about what it is that we're seeing before we rush to judgment to try to problem solve it. Then we need to analyze the data. So analyzing the data means reviewing it together as a leadership team, looking at, okay, are we on track or are we off track? And then we need to use more than one data point because sometimes we're using one data point and that one data point isn't giving us the full picture to really make a decision. And then we need to notice, what is it that our students are doing well, where they're doing well as what is it that our students may not be doing, which then takes us back to thinking slowly and deeply about our teacher evaluation system and what those results are telling us, because that will lead us to making a data-driven decision in terms of our students may not be doing well because our teachers may not know how to teach that particular component. And then data drives change. The only way we can transform the system, as we at Swift believe, is we have to focus on teaching and learning. Allison, can you bring in our second poll question? So, what types of data do you use in your leadership team meetings? We're going to give one more minute before we close the poll. So, the variations. Yes. Okay. So, I saw the variations. So then, because I noticed that there's a, yeah, okay. So with that being said, state standardized test, 14.2% of you use that in your leadership team meetings. The highest is the benchmark assessments, which is 28.5%. No, Swift Fit assessment, which is 42.8%, and the common formative assessment, which is 14.2%. Thank you, Allison. So as we, let me move this, the poll. So as today, we're going to look at the different data sources that you just took a poll on. So what is it the data, why do we have these particular data sources, and how can we use them to improve student achievement? Who and what are possible data sources and points for each of the evaluation questions that are in the FIT assessment, as well as how do we use the FIA to monitor whether we are working toward all students making adequate yearly growth. So now the data pyramid. What this means is that summative assessment means that that's the physical. So every year we go to the doctor and we get a physical because we need to find out whether we are maintaining our health. Are we as healthy as we were last year? And if so, the doctor will say, great, see you next year. Summative assessment is every year we take a FIT. The FIT basically tells us how well we're doing collectively as a system at the district level and at the school level. It also tells us what is it that we're doing well, which is what are our strengths, and what are some opportunities for us to visit so that the following year when we do another summative assessment, those are some of the areas that we've worked on and they're now not opportunities, but they're strengths. That means that we're strengthening the system from within. The other thing that we use as a formative assessment, which is basically the state assessment, and the state assessment tells us over the course of the year whether the students learned what was taught in the curriculum. And then throughout the year, we have 3 benchmark assessments. Some of us use NWA MAP, and there are other benchmark assessment tools out there. But the benchmark assessment basically tells us in between last year's summative assessment on the state assessments, working toward this year's state assessment, how well our children are doing in terms of moving closer to grade level proficiency. And then we move to progress monitoring, which comes in between the benchmarks. It's too late for us to take a benchmark assessment at the beginning of the school year and then midwinter benchmark assessment, we find out that the student did not respond to instruction and or interventions. That's where the progress monitoring comes into play. Progress monitoring of students, depending on where they fall within the tier, to include tier 1, there's a misconception that students at tier 1 should not be progress monitored. They should, because we need to know if they're still on track and if they're growing as well. The other thing that we use as a progress monitoring based on the FIT assessment is the FIA. because the fear measures whether, when we're in our leadership team meetings, whether we are on track to achieving the goals that we've set out to achieve for this school year based on our FIT results. And then we have common formative assessments. The common formative assessments will reveal to us whether the children are responding to the curriculum that's being taught, the units of study, so that we're not waiting for children to fail. We are responding to the children in the immediate real time. And so that's another data point that we must always make sure that we have those in place. And then there's the classroom formative assessments. Right at the end of the lesson, a teacher should be using an exit ticket, because the exit ticket is a quick assessment that lets the teacher know whether the student responded to the instruction that was taught during that lesson, and it will give her the information, him or her, the information they need to plan tomorrow's lesson for all students to ensure that all students are making progress. So why should we use data? Why is that so important? Until you have data as your backup, you're just another person with an opinion. Data keeps us honest. Data lets us have leadership team meetings where it doesn't become about feelings, what we think. It becomes about what is the data telling us, not only quantitative, but qualitative. So now, what does it take to go from a good school to a great school? As you know, Swift transformation is about moving our schools from being good to great, and moving us from below the line to above the line. When we're below the line, we don't use data. What we use are feelings, and then we blame. We blame the children for not making progress. We blame the system for not making progress. We just blame each other because we don't know why we're not making progress. When we go above the line, so the first step is we see the data. What is the data telling us? Then we say, okay, this is what our data is telling us. We own it. And how we own it is we then go to the problem solving process. And when we go through the problem solving process, we say, okay, this is where we are. This is what we're doing well. These are some areas that we have opportunities to influence the student achievement so that not a few, not some, but all of our students are making adequate progress and we're closing the achievement gap. And then the next step is the do it, the action plan. What are our priority goals? And underneath those priority goals, what are the specific strategies we're going to use to address what it is that we found within our data analysis or our data review during the leadership team meetings? Are we using data, and are we pushing down within the system to ensure at the grade level meetings the teachers are seeing the data, they're owning the data, they're problem solving, and then their do it is that it's translating into changing their teacher practices in the classroom. So their do it is called a lesson plan. The lesson plan is their action plan. And so we need to connect the dots. The dots from the classroom is the lesson plan being effective with meeting the needs of all of the children in their classrooms. At the school level, it's the action plan, and the action plan is based on the data that's coming up from the classrooms. At the district level, it's an action plan, and that action plan should encompass all of the action plans within the schools that you are trying to improve. And at the state level, the action plan should be based on how you're going to support the schools in achieving those goals. So now let's talk about analyzing and assessing. Swift data drives decisions. So now when we look at improving teaching and learning, which is one of our FIT which is one of our Swift core domains for administrative leadership, what does it mean when we come in to do a fit assessment and we look at your data? We meet with several stakeholders within your system. We meet with the leadership team, we meet with a special educator, we meet with a general education educator, we meet with the principal, we meet with all of the stakeholders who are responsible for improving teaching and learning. And we assess as the leader, how is the leader implementing and or um, supporting the action plan, which was created based on doing the fidelity of implementation test. And so once we look at where we are in terms of this domain, and we look at where we are in terms of are we on track? So, did we achieve a level 3, which means we have all of the components in place? Or are we at level 2? And what does that mean in terms of using that to inform our action planning process? How will we grow as a system? How will we grow our teachers? What are the things that we need to do based on the results of the fit? So if we were a 1 last year and we have a fit this year, we should at least be at a 2 or 3, because the 1 would have revealed to us what it is that we had in place that was working well. So for example, professional development learning is provided primarily for instructional personnel, and or provision is later than 2 to 3 months from the request. So we're looking at, is the professional development and coaching, when you use data to drive change, data means we're using it in real time. So as we're meeting on a weekly basis, some team leadership teams meet weekly, some meet bi-weekly, some meet monthly. It depends on whether you are a system that um, has made a choice where you may have a lot of children who are struggling, which may require you to meet more often. And so as a result, you will then say, well, you know what? We need to measure whether our professional development and coaching is working. How do we measure it? Well, it's not just measuring whether the children are improving in the classrooms. We also need to use surveys. What is it that was accomplished during that professional development and or coaching session? How did the teacher and or participants feel about the learning or the content that was presented, and are they able to apply it in real time? And then when you're doing your instructional rounds, which then goes back to administrative leadership, the data point that you're looking for is triangulating. Okay, so based on the surveys, the participants said that this particular training met their needs, and these are the things that they're able to do as a result of this training or as a result of this coaching. So now when you're doing your instructional rounds, you need to look for, are these things being implemented? That's another data point. And is it translating into our teachers getting better? Therefore, our students are now responding to instruction. This leads us back to, if our teachers are getting better and we're growing them based on the fit, the following year, when we're doing the assessment, we should see positive change. Teacher evaluation equals student achievement. When teachers are getting better, students are responding to instruction. Hence, we see, not only do we see proficiency, because when we have students that are proficient, then automatically they're growing, but we also have some students who may not have been proficient, but they're growing closer to grade level proficiency. Hence, we're narrowing the achievement gap. So now what does it mean to have the fit? How does the fit and MTSS relate? So what the fit is, when we think about it in one simple term, it's basically collecting data. It's collecting data on the core components that we know make great schools, make great classrooms, make great districts, and make great states. And so when we talk about multi-tiered systems of support, The FIT tool is helping us to inform at every level within the system our leadership teams. And so at the state level, when we use data, we're using data from the district, and the district is feeding the data from the schools. And so when we're looking at how are we doing as a system, and we're using MTSS, we're looking at, okay, if we have good teachers, going from a good to great system, if we have good teachers in every classroom, then all students should be accessing general ed curriculum during the Tier 1 instruction. Some students will need some additional support. And so those students, based on the data, the problem solving process approach, those students we need to find out using the different types of data, what is it that these children need additionally to be successful so we can move them back down to Tier 1 with just differentiated supports. Then we have the Tier 3 students, and those are a few students who need more than Tier 2. So what does that all mean when we say that we are a system that's going from good to great? Student achievement is at the heart and the center of what we do. Where we start is with the data. All of our decisions are based on the data that we have available to us, and not using all different data points at the same time, but using the data points that are relevant, that informs our professional development, which then supports providing support at every level to the students, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that when we're using data to solve problems, that students are improving. So now the temperature check. What does this mean when we have the FIA? So for example, if our FIT, one of the areas that we decided to prioritize was professional development and coaching, what we would do is during our leadership team meetings, we would use the FIA to measure whether we are on track with achieving that goal in terms of our system getting better, or whether we're off track. Because we need to know, it's not enough for us to have a FIT once a year. The FIT is our summative assessment. The FIA basically is our progress monitoring. Are we getting better from the time we took that first FIT? Are we moving in the direction so that when we have our next FIT assessment at the end of the year, we will have achieved the goals that we set out to achieve? So what should our goals be? These are some of our essential questions. What is the data telling us about gaps in achievement? Is it telling us that there's some students based on their demographics that are not making achievement? Is it telling us that some students are making, some groups of students are making more achievement in one grade level than another? Those are the decisions that we need to, that's the information we need to know to make informed decisions about what is it that strategies we need to put in place to improve student achievement. And then being very specific in terms of our goals. What specifically are we trying to achieve? So if we're trying to get to 80% of our students at proficiency, how are we going to measure it? Are we going to use a benchmark assessment? Are we going to use the state summative assessment? And what's the relevancy, and when are we going to measure it? What opportunities stand in the way of us achieving our goals? So identifying some of the barriers up front. While we may not have an instructional coach at the school building, however, we may have state instructional coaches. How can we tap into that resource? Now that goes into when Swift talks about the importance of resource mapping. That's what we're talking about. What opportunities stand in the way of us achieving our goals? Because once you identify the barriers, then you can use the resource mapping process at the state level or the resource matching process at the district level to identify additional supports and opportunities to ensure that you're on track to achieve your goals. So that's another source of data, the resource matching as well as the resource mapping. Those are two data sources that you can use to identify supports to help you achieve your goals. So now when we talk about grading initiatives and we talk about leading with a purpose and being driven by data, what is it specifically do we mean by being driven by data? Being driven by data means that the leadership team at the district level, as well as at the school level and the state level. But this is just an example. The leadership team activities result in the coordination of efforts, both in and outside of the school to set up sustainable systems to ensure that not a few students, not some students, but all students are successful. Effective supports are developed and implemented while the team monitors and acts upon the results. So when we talk about the team monitoring, monitoring means, do we have progress monitoring systems and infrastructure in place to ensure that we are monitoring the results of our actions. To create an action plan and then not monitor whether we're getting results, means that it's a plan that may just be a dream, because it may not come to reality, because we can't get better at something unless we're monitoring as we go along. Are we working collaboratively to establish the action plan? So is it an action plan that one person wrote and then just handed it off to everybody on the team and said, this is what we're going to do? The action planning process requires everyone to participate, to come up with to participate and to talk about what they gleaned from the data and some of the ideas and strategies that they feel would be best to implement moving forward using FIT, the FIA, and the multiple sources of student achievement data that districts use and schools use to drive change. Professional learning communities and instructional coaching, is it available to all teachers and all staff?
Okay, do we have any other questions?
Staff from the state
If
level
not, I'll just
level.
we'll give it a few more minutes to see if anybody has any other questions. And
The adults
Looks like we have a few more coming